Hello, screenwriters, and welcome to Writing for Screens. Today's episode, Ask Me Almost Anything. My name is Glenn Gers, and I am the Chief Operating Everything at Writing for Screens, a channel in which I have tried to take the skills and tools and insights that I got in a 25-year career writing for TV and movies and pass them on to you on my way out of the business. So I have tried to devise this channel here. Let me show you. This is a screen grab of the main page. If you look down at the bottom, you will see a bunch of playlists. These playlists, the first three of them as you scroll down, are Screenwriting Essentials, Screenwriting Tools, Skills, and Craft, and The Process, Being a Writer. These three playlists comprise about 50 10-ish minute videos in which I have, well, I call them the lesson videos. I've tried to take on a topic like genre, flashbacks, character, dialogue, and talk to you in about 10 minutes, everything I can think of that you might try out for yourself. The key thing here is there is no right way or wrong way. These are just ideas. These are just techniques. Try them out and see whether they work for you. I urge you to take a look at those playlists because almost anything that you could ask me or that I could tell you is going to be already answered there in those lessons. I spent many years putting them together, and they are there 24/7 for you for free to see if these skills and ideas help you. You're going to have to figure out for yourself what the best thing is for you. Every artist has their own goals, their own situation, their own personal needs and techniques, their own personal ways of working. Nobody can tell you what's right or wrong for you. No one can tell you the only way to do it is this. All I can tell you is these are some things I tried for myself. These are some things I heard about other people doing. See if they work for you. I try to put them in really practical terms. There's no grand theory here. There's no particular plan. I am not going to be able to help you to win the game of becoming rich and famous. My personal belief is that if you are good and you are hardworking and you've developed a process, that gives you the best chance to be as rich and famous as you're going to be, considering the way that the world works and the fact that a great deal of it, even for the most talented of us, is based in luck and chance. So all you can do is get good, work hard, and prepare yourself to be lucky, make yourself available to luck. That's all I got to offer you. And then once a week here, Wednesdays at 1 p.m., I come to you at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time Zone for an hour answering questions or talking about a topic that I think is interesting. So that's what we're doing here today. Open for questions, whatever happens. So let me just say some quick hellos and then we'll get right into the questions. Nathan, how you doing? Ming, good to see you. Donna, and hello for Down Under. Sonia, hello. Pelicans and Michael, got a lot of regulars here. Hasko, not the pirate, and Matthew, hello. Hello, everybody. Okay, good. So the main thing is I didn't come with a lecture this time. I try not to do that every time so that I give you guys a chance to ask questions. For those of you lurking who have not said hello, not a problem at all, but please do consider if you have a question, I am here to answer it. Just to get things started, I'm going to talk about a question that I got by email a couple of days ago. I think I've actually answered it before, but the question is, how do you handle dialogue that is in a language far into the language you are writing in? Hold on a second. What I'm going to do is, as I ask each of these questions, I'm going to type it out. Okay. So the question here is, how do you format dialogue that is in another language translated? Okay, let's see how this goes. Boom. There you go. How do you format dialogue that is in another language or translated or subtitled? A lot of times somebody will have characters who are bilingual or talking in another language than the one that the film is made in. And the question is, how do you show that in your script without having to write subtitled or whatever on every single line? My basic answer is if there's going to be just one scene, you can simply say at the top of that scene in a little parentheses, these people are speaking X language. It will be subtitled, and is shown here in italics. And then you write that dialogue in italics. Likewise, if it's something that runs through the entire script, put it as a note at the beginning of the script. After the title page, before the script begins, just put in another little page with a note that says, many people in this script speak X language. That will be indicated by italics. It will be subtitled on the screen. That kind of thing. That's how you do it. All right. Arkmish. Hello, Arkmish. How much about the character do we need to know before forming the concept and the outline? That is an excellent question. And the answer is it depends. The answer to anything is going to always be see how you work it out. But the main question about this is how much about the character do we need to know? It depends on whether you are going to do this process in which you answer a lot of these questions in the outline. That's how I personally work, simply because I get too confused and scattered. I will make discoveries along the way, and that's natural. It's going to happen anytime. But for me, I like to work out the characters. I like to work out an outline and put every single scene in the outline. I've got several videos about this process. Hold on, let me just show you those. Why outline and how to outline are my main two. And what I try and do there is explain that for me, it helps to lay out every scene in a separate document that I can do my thinking and rearranging and asking questions in. The reason for me is, I don't know how to write the text, the scene, the moment, until I've asked those questions. In other words, there's too many possibilities. And what will happen is the scenes will become inconsistent for me because if I haven't thought it out, I don't know what someone wants in the scene. I don't know what they're trying to do. I don't know how they're feeling. So I could answer that in that one scene. And then in theory, the next scene would require that stays consistent. And then you could figure out the character as you know. If you do that, what you're going to probably need to do later is go back and change some things that you wrote early on when you didn't know those things about the character. But a lot of writers write that way. Almost none start with nothing. Some will start with very little. Some will start with a basic idea of the story, but not really break it down as an outline. So the answer is, how much do you need to know? Nothing. You could start by saying, a man with a pipe walks into the room, and then you ask yourself, who is this man with the pipe? Why does he have a pipe? Why does that matter? What do I know about him? What is he doing? And you'll figure out the character as you go along. That's cool if you can do that. I personally can't do that. I feel too lost and confused because I don't know what they would say until I know who they are and what the scene is. Who they are and who they are interacting with is the only way to know, for me, how to write a line. So the answer for me would be, if you can write without knowing much about the character, go ahead. I personally find that the more I've thought it out, the more that I am able to be creative in the scene. Some people say they feel like it's boring or there's no reason to write it if they've already answered those questions. If that is the way you write and if you can write it, cool. I feel like most of those writers have, in their mind, figured out a basis for the story. and they know pretty much what kind of story they're going to write. I would say the answer is try writing without knowing it. But for me, I need to know everything. For instance, I am currently writing a novel, which is even more work in the outline. And I have been working on this outline for years, but especially this past year, almost nonstop for a year. So this outline is very detailed. And yet yesterday, I still got to a scene where I'm like, there was going to be a guy in the scene who overhears a couple having a fight through a door. They don't know he can hear them. I have known the scene is going to be there for years. And yet when I came to write the scene, I couldn't quite do it because although I knew these characters in detail, I know a lot about these characters, but I didn't know exactly what they were fighting about at that moment. Where in their relationship were they that this fight broke out then? So I had to stop and ask myself that question before I could write the scene. I tried writing a version where I didn't know, and it came out generic. It came out vague. It was like their biggest problems most obviously stated. I don't like that. So I wanted to go back and think, what exactly is happening in this moment? What part of their relationship was triggered into a fight now? So for me, I had to answer that as an outline question before I could write the scene. But if for you, you can write it without that, cool, try it. The answer is there's no rule. With all of these things, what's going to happen is as you work, you are going to have to figure them out. If you figure them out while you're writing, if you figure them out after you're writing and go back, whatever it is, eventually you're going to have to get to it. So I wouldn't worry too much about the order that you do things in. Everyone will do it in the way that's comfortable for their brain. Your brain and my brain may work differently. For me, I need to know the story and the moment very exactly in order to get into that improvisational, imaginary mind space where you start to think about dialogue, where you think something about words, where you say, oh, he says, you never liked my cooking. and that won't come to me until I'm already there in the scene in my mind. Otherwise, I'll just grab something from random other sources. It's not for me a good way to do it. But the answer is with all process for me, do the part that you feel strong about doing, and the other parts will then build around that. You'll get to all of them eventually. In order to make a script work, you're going to have to eventually answer every question for yourself. What order? Do you need to know the character first, or could you just know the plot? Could you just have an idea of the genre and a twist, and then you work it out as you go along? All of those things can work, but sooner or later, you're going to have to say, well, what's the ending? Well, who are these characters? Well, what is the theme? Those questions will come up. When they come up does not matter. You can have the theme before you have the characters. You can have the characters before you have the theme. Whatever it is, you're going to then have to ask, what's the other one? Like if you have the theme, it's like, who are the people that play this out? If you have the characters and you know what they're doing, you're going to say, well, what does that mean? What emotion, what idea is that giving us? And that's going to be your theme. So either way, it's all good. All right. Hi, Ricky. Yes, make yourself available to luck. That's a big part of what people call success. Is you can't control success. You can only control the work that you do, and therefore doing the work as much as you can and showing it to people as much as you can. That's really all you can do. Okay, Michael says, I heard some write fast. It usually takes me 4 months to write a draft. Am I slow? No. That is not particularly slow. Honestly, there are some people who can, yes, some people can write faster than that, but 4 months is not long. A usual contract in a Hollywood deal often will be about 3 months for a draft, which includes all the outline steps and all that. So 3 to 4 months, that's not a big deal. That's fine. But if you were slow, who cares? It's like you are going to be as fast as you're going to be. If you are trying to write professionally, if you are trying to write, for the business, at least in America, you do need to be able to put stuff out at a fairly fast clip. It's expected that if you were like working on TV, you can write an episode in a week, usually with the outline already done for you. If you're writing features, there are times when people say, you got to come up with this new scene by tomorrow. So, but if you're just writing for yourself, write at the pace that you can write at. Write at the best pace you can write at, but don't feel bad if it doesn't. Would you make a video about the first draft process? I would say that the thing you want to do there is look at my videos that are already existing. Hold on. Let me do this. Step by step. Okay. Screenwriting step by step. That is, there we go. Look at that. There's a whole playlist, 260 something videos in which I show my process all the way through. Please look at that. The answer is I don't have a particular first draft process. I've talked about the idea of just getting it down. In other words, for me, the process is do an outline, write a first draft based on that outline that is the best you can do, even if it's utter garbage. If you have got everything from the outline onto the script page, even in the worst possible version, that's your first draft. My first drafts are often like 60 pages because they're just terrible. The answer is the first draft isn't a particular process. But if you do want to see how I did that, this screenwriting step-by-step playlist, which is on my channel, look for it. There are about 200 hours of what I did was I just wrote a script with the camera on. I would just start I did it every day for a year and a half. I would do an hour a day. And I screen shared and I talked about what I was doing. So you can see the process that I personally went through. But my answer would be the main thing about the first draft is the goal is to get it on the page, to get whatever you can on the page. If you are the sort of person who does an outline, then you're kind of making it up as you go along and you throw everything you can down there. I personally am not a big fan of making that first draft great or even good. I think getting it down is more important than getting it right in a first draft. Some people call it the vomit draft, although it's so disgusting I don't like to call it that. The messy draft, the bad draft, whatever, the first draft. Whatever you can get on the page, even if it's just this scene is going to be about how he overhears them having a fight. If that's the best you can do, then think, okay, start by describing. He is in the stairway. He is listening at the door. He was about to knock. He stops because he hears raised voices, whatever. Then you've got a rough draft. That's my version of the first draft process. Oh no, I am so sorry. Sorry about that, Gene. I didn't realize you were in the path of the hurricane. How cool that you can still be here with no power. I hope you are well. I hope you are well supplied with water and food and that you stay safe. Hello, Dominic D. All right, Donna. Last night I watched the finale. Oh, careful of spoilers. I was waiting for the finale to start it. I don't like to wait a week between episodes. The voiceover was, "What does it take to be a serious writer? First off is the look." My question is, did you find that LA writers are judged on something as shallow as that? That is a fascinating question. All right, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how LA writers are in the Hollywood business. How are you judged? Yes, to a certain extent, it will help you to, well, first of all, you have to remember, it may not be the look, although, there is an unconscious bias towards someone who seems like they have put care into how they dress, even though in Hollywood, most people who go to meetings, they dress like this. Some people go in a t-shirt, sneakers. That is not impossible. The question is, does it look like you didn't care? So the answer with that would be that. But it's not really about the look. It's more about what I would call presentation of self. The ability to listen, the ability to answer questions, the ability to appear that you understand the idea of going back and forth, and the ability to respond to questions or changes or thoughts, because that's the main thing that writers in LA are going to be required to do. Writing screenplays or television is not a solitary job in the business. You may go off and spend a little time writing a draft, but most of the time you are talking to people. You are getting notes. You are having meetings and then planning the next step. That's what they are going to be looking for. And so therefore, the ability to not talk not talk too much, not talk too little, conversational skills, I would say, is actually more important than the look. The other thing that's very important, unfortunately, is having a story. I hate to say this because I think it's ridiculous, but a lot of people in the business, especially agents, managers, producers, they are looking for someone to say, I was an ambulance driver, and that's how I came to write this script. I saw a lot of rough life, or I grew up in a tropical island with no power or buildings. Whatever it is that people tend to like, that you have a story. My story is, unfortunately, I'm a boring city kid who always wanted to be a writer. So what are you going to do? If you don't have a story, if you have an enthusiasm, if you have a passion for a genre, if you have a passion for a style, if you have a passion for a subject, passion is important. The ability to communicate, which is not always easy for writers. Many writers are absolutely fine writing things down, but have a hard time, especially in the stressful condition of when you're in a meeting with someone for your business, you are feeling like it's life or death. If you get fired, if you don't get the job, it will have an impact on you that's so painful that you often will overpromise or beg, or lots of things that people don't generally want to have. They want you to have some form of confidence and competence, and passion, and a recognition of the skills required, recognizing that if they say to you, we need you to change this character, that you can think in your mind, okay, technically, how do I do that? Not, oh, the character came from my heart and I can only change them if I have a new heart. That's not going to help them when they say, we need this character to be different because that's what we need because we're the boss. That's how that works. Okay. How much shot editing and mise-en-scene should influence screenwriting? Very, very little. Truly, unless you are planning to direct it yourself and have a reasonable expectation that you will direct it yourself, in which case, honestly, even then, don't write it into the script. The script should convey the reality of the story, not of the filming. That's really my main feeling on this. Yes, obviously, if it's really important that you see these people from overhead, sure, write that in. But most of the time, that's not important. That's a storytelling question, and that's not a screenwriter's job. The screenwriter's job is to create the reality of the characters in the story, to make that as involving and believable on the page as possible, so that all the other people who do their jobs, the director, the cinematographer, the composer, the designer, so they can look at that story, those characters, those ideas, and they can say, this is how I would do my job to tell that story. They want you to give them the story, the people, the moments. They want you to provide the structure and the surprise and the feeling so that they can say, how would I shoot that? How would I edit that? Unless there is a specific story need to have something be like edited with no cuts or edited with lots of cuts, don't ever mention that. The main goal of writing a scene, writing a script, is to make the people reading it believe and care about what's happening to the imaginary people in the imaginary situations. Then they will do those other jobs. Okay. Burgundy has a good point. R looks shallow. I mean, what is within our control, of course? You can tell a story through clothes. One reason costume design is important to actors. Yes, that is the other thing, is that like I said, it's not necessarily, you don't have to wear a suit and tie. You don't have to do special makeup or have an Instagram face. All you need to do is have some self-care and presentation. Most, honestly, especially in Hollywood, the level of competition for a visual appeal is ridiculous. We're not going to win that one. So just try to, look the way that you feel you are presenting yourself at your best. If that is a scary goth punk, cool, then be that and do that. Yes, there will be a lot of people like, I can't talk to that person. But the other people will be like, oh, that person A has confidence, and B, that may be appropriate to our story. Or they'd be like, wow, how cool. This radically emo goth punk person really wrote a script about whaling in the 1860s, and they're experts on that. Neat. Who would have thought it? I would say that it is important to remember that your presentation of yourself, whether or not you love yourself, we all have things we don't like about ourselves, especially physically, visually. We do the best we can. So yeah. Okay. All right. So the continuation of Donna's question was, is it infinitely easier to get interest once you're known? Well, yeah, sure. One character was asked if she had a hook, and her reply was inane, but it didn't matter because she's known now. Yes. Okay. Two things. One, it is very important to remember that Only Murders in the Building is not at all realistic. Okay. It is not a presentation of any reality ever. I lived in New York. I lived in LA. I've worked in the various fields that they've talked about. I have worked in theater. I am telling you, there is nothing realistic about Only Murders in the Building. It's delightful, but it is based in cliches. It is based in comedy types, which are funny. But you shouldn't judge how things work in the business, in New York, in the theater, in podcasting. None of that is correctly portrayed. That's not to say it's not fun, but it's just I wouldn't use that as a good example. Hello, Doreen. Oh, my lips are not working in sync. Let me see. Am I in sync now? Let me know. I just turned, my computer was backing up as I was doing this. That may have, okay. Donna, okay. So the answer is, does it help to be known? Of course. It helps to be known within the business in the sense that if you have some proof of competence, if you have some proof of success in the eyes of the business, if you have done something that they can say, oh, I saw that, or oh, that made money, or oh, that meant you worked with so-and-so. Those are things that help prove that you have some capability. And also, the goal of everyone in the movie business is to get attention. Through attention, they get money. So therefore, getting that eyes of the audience is easier if there is something that is recognizable, that you can say, okay, this person already has a value in that there are people who like them for that last thing they did. Excuse me. But likewise, therefore, an influencer who can't act at all might be an appealing actor simply because they have 1 million followers and they hope that some of those followers will see the movie. The answer is always going to be, is it easier once you're in? Yes. Is it everything solved? No. Even when you are very, very famous, you have constant challenges to maintaining your position or advancing, depending on your goals. Hi, Darian. Okay, let me zoom ahead. Okay, Viol says, hello. Hi, very nice to meet you. Could you please recommend how to write quicker? It doesn't take long for me to get exhausted after writing a paragraph or two, which is demotivating. Do you know why this happens? This is interesting because it happens to me too. And so what I would say is there's a couple of things that are going on in this. One is try to examine how many stressful elements are are you frightened? Are you worried? Are you thinking about things other than the writing when you're writing? Because that will exhaust you. That will, and it's normal. We all do it, but do try and recognize that the more you write, the better you can feel about that. But assuming that your writing itself is partly maybe exhausting you because of external or extraneous emotional conflicts over writing. If you are fearful, that will make it harder to write for a sustained time. But the other thing that can happen, the thing that happens to me is I have some kind of minor level of ADHD, of which means that my mind works very quickly, too quickly often. However, it burns out at that speed pretty quickly. You can't change that dynamic if that's how your brain operates. So therefore, if you find yourself going in with a fair amount of enthusiasm and speed and your things are working well, but then you burn out fast, usually the best thing to do for me is to step away and recharge. Try and do something supportive of the creativity. If it's all it is read something related or watch something related, or sometimes do something very different, get some exercise or have a snack, depending on your personal needs and body. But the main thing is, if you find you are doing well, but burning out really fast, which is what happens to me all the time, the key is step away, do what it takes for you, and it will be different for everyone, to recharge, to etch a sketch, shake the screen clear, to build up your energy again. Hopefully that won't be too long, half an hour maybe, and then go back. That's the key. You can't necessarily, if you are the sort of person like me who burns out fast, you can't push through. You'll just burn out. You'll just be burned. So what you need to do is go away, come back, go away, come back, because that's how your energy or your focus operates. And the key to it is getting comfortable with knowing how you work. It's really important to test it, to say, if I step away and exercise, can I come back and focus again for my 20 minutes or whatever it is? So that's what I would suggest is, look and see if it's that if you are writing a paragraph or two and it's really hard, then you're burning out because it's hard. And I would say just the more you do it, the easier it should get. If you are feeling burned out because there's a lot of emotion outside of the writing emotion, fear of money problems, fear of whatever, deal with those separately. Work on them, recognize them, and say, while I'm writing, try and get into the moment. There is a video I did called Fear of Writing. And I would suggest you look at that only because the question becomes, most of the time, if you're not just burning out because of a fast brain, you're probably suffering from some form of fear. And I give a lot of suggestions in that video, Fear of Writing, about things to do to deal with that fear, which are mainly small steps, and be okay with that, and being very specific. But anyway, once again, Viol, my answer would be, you have to figure out what's happening that you get exhausted. Are you getting exhausted because of the stress, or are you getting exhausted because of the speed of your creative process? And then you work out from there by trying things. Different problems have different solutions, but none of them get answered in the script. This is actually a tricky thing. You can't, if your problems are emotional, you can't solve them by just forcing yourself to write. You have to figure out what is the cause of this exhaustion. And then whatever that cause is, you have to apply yourself to that. My script takes place entirely at night. Do I write later or continuous night? Well, the answer is it continuous? Continuous is very specific. It has a very specific meaning. It means there is no break in time. Later means the scene ends and the next scene takes place later. Continuous means they've walked from one room to the other and it's continuous from there. So the answer is, it'll depend. You don't have to write continuous night. You just write continuous because it's continuous from the night. Okay. Okay. David Wright. Hi. I just saw the movie The Substance. I have not heard, but I was surprised they used a voice of God voiceover for a key scene with no setup or justification. Rules are meant to be broken, I guess. Yes, rules are meant to be broken. That is absolutely right. Sometimes you do stuff because it just seems right. I don't know how much they planned that. I don't know. So, like, for instance, one of my favorite movies, The Apartment, begins with a voiceover from, I believe it's from the main character. He's sort of explaining his life. And then you never have a voiceover from him again. It just stops. It's like, what? The answer is, yeah, okay. That was how they felt like doing it. The people who did The Substance were clearly working on their own aesthetic. From what I've heard, I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard it's terrific, actually, but very, very gory and shocking. And what I would say about it is, sometimes rules are made to be broken, but depending on the situation, you may not have the power to break them. In other words, if you are working for a company or a director that feels strongly about the rules, they will say, hey, take out that voiceover. We don't do that. That's against the rules. You don't own the project. You can't say anything about it. If you are writing a spec script and you want to break a rule, just recognize that there will be people who will be like, either I don't like this script because the rule was broken, or if they do like the script, they'll say, I like this script, but you're going to have to change that breaking of the rule. If you're writing your own script for your own pleasure and you have a rule-breaking feeling and you feel strongly about it, try it. Okay, so it's about this nurse. That's the intro to my character video. What's your thoughts on having a main character purpose be a vehicle to have other things happen to them that reveal other characters' lives or issues? That's tricky. It's an interesting plan, and it's a very valid way to tell a story. You could tell the story of a person who they are, like, technically, in The Great Gatsby, Nick Carraway, the narrator, is not the main character. He's the narrator, so he is the main character. It's his story of his experiences. But the main character is probably, I think, is fair to say, Gatsby. So the answer is how you define main character. Within the thing that your main character, in your case, if your main character is dealing with a group of people, among those group of people, who's the main one? Or is it an ensemble where there's several stories? The main thing is, if you are telling a story about a character whose story is the discovery and understanding and relating of other people's stories, you just need to make it clear pretty early in the story that the other people are who we are really following. That's very doable. It's unusual for a Hollywood movie in that they like to have the main character be very active. And it sounds like your main character would be more observing. But that's okay. That can work. I mean, there's no reason that story couldn't be told. That's one of those rule breaking that you have to see if people like it. But my main answer would be a story about a main character who observes and interacts with other people who have dramas that they're not involved in. That's kind of a neat story. Usually that character either is going to tell you a story within those stories that is really the main story, or the telling of the following of this person tells you something. It tells you something about what they have observed about this world, or maybe they do change during the course of it. There isn't an absolute rule to this. The point is, whether or not your main character is taking the main action, somebody has to be taking the main action. There has to be some center to your story. If it's an ensemble story, it has to be still centered around a certain set of events. In theory, they are related, even if just thematically. But there is some reason that we are seeing this group of people. That reason is your driving story. Okay. Hi, Blaine. What's your top 3 storytelling books? That is a very interesting question. I wouldn't say I have a problem with top anything. Like if you say top, my first answer is I have 50. Although with storytelling books, if you mean like how to do screenwriting, I actually have very few. I really don't like most of them. I read Sid Field's screenplay a long time ago, and I thought it was good. This one, Sid Field's screenplay. There are probably others. They all came along after I was a writer. When I started writing, there weren't that many how-to books. There was William Goldman's book, which isn't really a good how-to book. It's a fascinating insight, and you learn some things along the way, but it's not a how-to book. So I assume that when you say storytelling books, you mean books about storytelling. And the answer would be, I'm a bad person to ask about that. I find them very frustrating. It's one of the reasons I'm doing this, is because I found the books very academic and very forcing you into a specific system that I don't like. I would say that there are a bunch of good resources. Backstory Online Magazine by Jeff Goldsmith, and he also has a podcast, the Q&A. This excellent. Film Courage, obviously, is a good channel. There is, the Screenwriting Life podcast is a really good one. On Story by the Austin Film Festival. These are all really good resources for a lot of different insights. Instead of one book, they usually do interviews with people who do the job. And my experience is the more of those that you can get, the more you can pluck insights that are useful. But I just don't believe that there's a systematic answer that a book would tell you. Okay. May I suggest let's stop questions because I'm still like way behind on going through. So let's stop. Let's see if I can catch up. My challenge is that I could not read classics or any form of literature and YouTube videos since it's influencing my writing process. I could not digest them with innocence. I even see my daily life incidents as scene for a story. Is this normal? Hello, Boson Quark, and hello, greetings to you in India. Normal. Is this normal? That is a question we should all forget. It doesn't matter. Normal would suggest some kind of right. And as I often say, every artist must make their own path, which means you don't even choose. You have to actually make it. You have to say, this is how I am doing it. If you do it well, if you feel comfortable, if you feel creative and satisfied by not ever reading anything or watching YouTube videos and just going from your reaction to the art form, great, do that. If you feel like your life is going into your scripts, as long as you are not going to use actual identities of real people in a way that they could be identified, do that. There is no normal, there is no right or wrong when it comes to creative work. You need to figure out for you, is this working for you? The way that you test if it's working for you is to say, am I getting done what I want to get done? Do I feel good when I am doing it? And sometimes you don't, but overall you should work towards a process that you actually look forward to doing. When you start to write for the day, are you thinking, oh, this could be fun. It will be hard. I will be confused. I will be scared, but it's overall worth doing. If you are feeling good about the process that you're working in, if you are feeling like this, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but it's working for me, that's it. You're done. That's it. Do that process. If you are finding yourself saying, I can't read or learn anything because if I do, it'll spoil this, but I really want to read something, then you have to think about why you are in that conflict. And therefore, the answer wouldn't be so much that it's not normal, but is it good for you? That's really the only answer. The answer is if your process is working for you, then do it. Normal doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what anyone else does. If you hear that someone else writes a certain way, that's how their brain works. That's how their talent works. It's not how yours works. Yours works your way. Sometimes there's overlap. Often there isn't. Okay. Donna just finished her 20th book. Wow, congratulations. That's great. I try to write a shorter story or work, but I can't help when storming, but blow it up to novel size. Brainstorming. I need small victories, but I can't seem to narrow my scope. Me too. So all I would suggest is make your small victories within your big project and try to learn to accept the limits on one because there will be others. That's the best thing I can offer. But I feel the same way. I go in too deep. I get too big. I get too broad. I want to put too much in. So the small victories become, can I get this little piece of my big thing? Good. Can I get this scene to work? If I can do that over and over for the 150 scenes that are in my book, then it'll be great. It will also not be a lot of other things I wanted it to be, but your small victories are within the work. As a beginner, should you accept what's thrown to you, or do you stand your ground? You mean as a beginner, like thrown to you professionally? As in, like if somebody says, I want you to write a horror film and you don't want to write a horror film, the answer is don't do something you don't feel you can do. But once again, the answer is going to be, what's your goal? If your goal is to earn a place in the professional business, take those bad jobs. That will never stop. Almost every professional writer I know spends half their time saying, I don't want to do this job, but it's the job that was offered. It was the job I got. It was the job that was offered. That is, not going to stop. Most people I know in the business, that's their daily life. But the answer is, if you want to stand your ground in saying, no, I only want to work on what I want to work on, just recognize nobody's going to pay you to do that. And when it's done, they may or may not like it. If you want to be a professional writer, the job is to do what other people want you to do. It always seems like the job of a professional writer is to create things that everyone's going to love and pay you for. That's not actually how most professional writers make their living. They mainly make their living by using their talent to service someone else's goal and plan. So the answer is, you have to decide, do you want to build up your profession or do you want to build up your art? Those usually are an either or. Sometimes you can go back and forth, say, okay, I'm going to do this one that was thrown up to you, and then I'll have a credit. Maybe I'll have some money. I will be able to say, hey, look, I proved myself. The next person who says, we want to hire someone, you can say, well, I did this. And then when, in your off hours or after that project is done, maybe you'll do the one you love. Also, thoughts on writing dialogue as if in a dream. Like I'd only use subjective one-liners and can be interpreted multiple ways in an audible background conversation. Okay. Well, first of all, if you write something inaudible, just recognize it doesn't count. I mean, it may be audible, like it may be like inaudible means it doesn't exist. As far as the audience is concerned, they'd have no idea what you're saying. So if you're writing something inaudible, just recognize the audience doesn't know and therefore probably won't care much. As far as subjective one-liners that can be interpreted multiple ways, there's only so far you can go with that. I mean, if you watch like Terrence Malick movies, he does a fair amount of that. Very few people will put up with that is in the audience. Once again, the answer is, if you want to do some kind of dreamlike thing, when you say subjective, that's tricky. Isn't all dialogue subjective? It's subjective both in the sense that it's your choice for what someone's saying, but even more, dialogue comes from the character. So yeah, but the question is, why would everyone in a story, in a scene, in a moment, talk that way? One person might because they have some reason, some condition, some philosophy that suggests that they want to be poetic. But if everything in your script is subjective one-liners, can be interpreted multiple ways, you're asking the audience to do a lot of work. In theory, they should be connected in some way. If you look at something like Beckett, Godot, there's a lot of things that can be interpreted and a lot of things that are kind of weird and vague and mysterious, but there's still a sense of characters in a story trying to communicate, trying to accomplish something. They don't necessarily succeed, but they are trying. So my answer would be writing dialogue as if in a dream is okay if your movie is a dream. If you're making a dreamlike story and you want it to be interpreted as a dream would be interpreted, okay, do that. There's a relatively small audience for dream stories, but they do exist and you can try it. Nicholas Refn does them. So I would say just recognize the cost in terms of mainstream acceptance is going to be fairly high. But if you're doing something because you have either a small audience in mind or a personal style that requires it, if that's your style, try to find people who like that style and do your style. Okay. Gene points out to Nathan about his inability to write things that are short. Each piece could be a story or chapter. It can be a serial. Another, yeah. All things break down to small pieces. All creative work that I can think of, certainly narrative work, breaks down into scenes, into moments, into lines. Those are your small victories. Okay. Alex GPT says, I often fill in an event which is there to propel my story with something generic or unfitting to who the characters are, but the problem is, Wait, one. This is one. Okay, I watch your. We got 1, 2, 3 out of order. I watch your streams and videos often, but I think it's my first time chatting. Hi, nice to see you. Your experience writing the argument between the couple is so relatable. Often, something generic. Sometimes I don't even notice that it's generic until I take a big break. Do you have any tips on noticing these blind spots sooner? That is a good question. To a certain extent, you can't. You'll see them as soon as you see them. For me, if you have a specific thing that you fear, like I fear this is not funny, I fear that this is generic, whatever it is, then you got a little alarm ready to go when you write something. You say there's a subconscious part of your mind asking that question. If you don't notice it, then the best thing to do is simply include in your process time to come back and see it. Most of the time, what I always feel when I'm writing is I'm getting this along the tracks, but I know it's not there, but I know that I can't see it now. So I know to stop, move on to another section, maybe do something else. And then tomorrow or next week, I'll come back to it and I'll see it. And I know that I can't see it when I'm doing it. So I put as part of my process, that's as far as I can go right now. It still does. It's only halfway there. You know, like with that scene with the people in the room, I did the generic version. I let them talk about the generic fight. And I said, I know that's not right, but for now, I'll do it. Then weeks later, I came back to it and I'm like, okay, that's generic. And then I had to sit down and really think it out. The next time I will write another version, more specific. Then I have to set it aside and come back. That's the process as far as I know it. I used to have this idea, the spiral process. I seem to have lost my, did I lose my, oh no, here it is. Okay, yeah. Basically the idea is that you start at the outer side of this spiral, and as you go around your story, let's see if I can do this. Oh, the other way. Let's go around your story. You see it from different angles, and you are able to work on it. So that's the answer. No more questions. It's at the end of the hour. I got to stop. Okay. Hi, Marcus. Hi, Anshul. Thank you. From the original nice shirt guy. Yes, thank you. Nice shirt. My wife actually bought this for me. As a professional, is there a writer currently in the industry you admire? Yes, there are many. Many. That's so hard. These questions always put me on the spot because a part of me is just thinking, I have a whole lot of other questions to answer. I can't go through the who do I like. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to answer list questions right now. I will try and think about it and answer that at another time. Okay. As a writer and filmmaker, it's so difficult to give way to your vision. No one can make what I write. Yeah, if this is about the question of do you refuse to do what other people ask, or do you follow your own vision, or do you take whatever they want? That's a question, once again, it's a question of what you're doing it for. If you're doing it for professional advancement or pay, then you do what it takes to get that. If you are doing it in order to establish your vision and get it at least on the page, then you do that. Cool. Okay, great. Great. Okay. Then is a time in writing when you find you have to go into uncomfortable places in your soul. This is when you embrace your approach. Yeah. Yes, that's absolutely true. This is in all of this process, you're going to find some time when it's going easily, and sometimes when you're coming up to something that is either frightening because you've never done it before, frightening because you know people might not like it, whatever it is, then you have to sort of find a way to survive the emotional pressure while you write that thing that you know is going to be emotionally pressured, and then step away and come back. And hopefully, eventually, you'll be able to sort out how you feel about those pressures on you. The pressures are real. You can't just say, "Oh, that doesn't matter." But the main thing to do is try and get the work to where you think it should be as best you can, and decide what you want to do about those pressures, if that makes any sense. Okay, Tom says, "Hi, Tom. What I'm doing this very second is stepping away from being burnt by 90 minutes of writing, mostly research." Yes, thank you, Tosh. Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, yeah. I honestly, I write really intensely for a short amount of time, and then I have to stop. Sometimes I stop by doing another productive thing, like I pay some bills or something, and then I come back, answer some emails. The most important thing for me to learn is to come back, because if you can get 4 or 5 of those sessions in a day instead of just one, which it used to be that I would only do one of those little productive beats a day, and I'd be like, thank God I got something done. I'll deal with it tomorrow. Now I've learned that if I do a couple a day, it's just more productive. It's more fun, honestly. Okay. Clarification of main character. The main is the one being followed throughout the whole thing, but revealing other families. Yes, that's right. Yeah. There is nothing wrong with having a main character who is involved in many other characters who shape their experience then and now. The question that you have when you have a main character who you're revealing their other people's lives is, meanwhile, what's happening to your main character? Is your main character learning something? Is your main character trying to do something? And maybe all they're trying to do is sort out the other people's problems. Cool. Maybe all they're trying to do is sort out their own feelings about the other thing. That's all okay. The main thing is that you don't want your characters to not be trying to do something. That's the secret. So let's talk about just that in terms of this one, dramatic action. My answer to you, Thread of Nemesis, is take a look at dramatic action. The question are these main characters' scenes, do they have a dramatic action? Are they doing something? Or are they simply, if they're just passively observing and interacting with people, you'll need to give some story power over the structure for the audience to know, like if all you're doing is simply observing random things, that to me is going to be, it's going to be an interesting artistic test. It's not conventionally what I would call a story. A story tends to have someone trying to do something. Now, it could be that your main character is observing people who are trying to do things. Great Gatsby, good example. Nick's story is his feelings as he observes. He's a minor character at best in what the other people are trying to do. What's happening in Gatsby is trying to regain his lost love. That's the story of The Great Gatsby. It is told through another character who is trying to first just help and is basically, in telling the story, trying to understand and communicate to us what they learned by observing. So Nick's action is to tell us something that moved him in the hopes that it will move us. Yeah, thank you. Oh, that's nice. Okay. Okay, no more questions. I have to go. John August, Story Beats Podcast. I do not know it personally, but I respect John August, and I bet it's good. Rich, this is an interesting question. Is there a comprehensive list of screenplay competitions anywhere that could be downloaded? I don't know. I've never entered a screenplay competition. I don't know what that's like. That all happened after I was a professional. But my guess is that there will be, search the internet. There's got to be online magazines or resources you may have to do, there may not be a comprehensive list, but there will be a bunch of lists. Okay, sir, how the hell do I make a film pitch deck? Please, please, please share your insights. Oh, that's a biggie. Pitching. It's 2:05. I've been on for over an hour. I can't do this now. What I will do is I will try and make pitch deck the topic of another Ask Me Anything. I'll do it in a couple weeks because that's a huge topic. My main feeling about pitching is, first of all, once again, pitch decks happened after I was in the business. I don't have them. I've never done them. So as far as an actual deck, I don't know. I do know how to make a pitch, and I can talk about that. So I will try to do that. For things about making an actual pitch deck, like if you're talking about a presentation that you show slides on and stuff, you should check the internet for people who are more into that. I've never done that. I feel like it's certainly doable. The main thing would be to get the pitch right, and then the deck should follow. So I'll try and talk about that another time. Okay. Ricky says, Somerset Maugham writes many of his stories as an observer, telling the story of the other characters, but they're adapted as movies. The narrator is usually dropped. Yes, the form of a narrated story is a classic literary trope for novels, because somebody's got to be telling the story. Movies tend to remove the narrator because narrators tend to stand between the audience and the drama. So unless the narrator has within them a purpose, like in Our Town, but that's a play, most narrated stories, they drop the narrator in the film version because you want the audience to be as immediately involved in the story. And the storyteller is the film itself. So, a narrator usually has a story of their own within the larger story. How do you handle screenwriting with ADHD? Like I said, very mild ADHD and love to India. But the answer is, like I said, the way I had to do it, everyone has to learn how they operate. Just to say, like, when I'm writing, I will write and I will be going, and then it will start to get hard. I will start to feel like nothing is good. I have learned to recognize that doesn't mean that things are bad. It means my brain is tired. And so therefore I had to learn, instead of trying to push through it, or worse, what I used to do is I would work really well, and then everything would start to feel bad. And I would think, I have to solve those problems. I had to learn to recognize problems weren't real. They were my feelings. My feeling was, I'm tired. I need to step away. Once I recognized that, the answer became stepping away and coming back to a different thing, possibly. Like if I've been writing a scene, step away, come back to another scene. By the time I get back to that scene that I stepped away from, I'm ready to go again. So the answer is that you handle it by recognizing how your brain works and not fighting it. There is no good way to fight your own brain. What you want to do is work with your brain. Your brain will have strengths and weaknesses. It'll have things that it does well and things that it does badly. You need to know those. You need to know yourself, know how your brain works. And then you can say, okay, I can rely on this. I need to do this to help my weakness. I may need to write lists or outlines. For me, outlines help. Questions help with me. And to know that long periods of writing don't work well with my brain. So I simply break up my writing into shorter pieces. And then, like I said, make a sandwich, pay some bills, whatever I have to do to wash my brain so that I can come back. Okay. Yvonne Zhang. Hi to France. And hello, Yvonne. The question is how to start from even an image to 100 chapters and hundreds of different characters. It's so easy to give up. 1,000 times before the final story comes out? This is a fair question. My answer is, to a certain extent, please look at my, almost everything in my channel is about that. Like if you go to my first 3 playlists, and especially the one, the bottom one here is the third one down, The Process. It's a playlist called The Process, Being a Writer. That is a bunch of videos about process. My answer to you would be, how do you keep going when it's so easy to give up? Process. The best thing you can do is get a routine, a ritual. I have a whole video called Create a Ritual. The more that you can get familiar with the work process, the more that you don't have to worry about whether or not you want to do the work. You will want to do the work because of your process being comfortable. There's many detailed suggestions in that playlist. With all these things I'm mentioning, my videos and playlists, I'll try and put a link down below in about 10 or 15 minutes after this is done so that you can find the links and click right on them. But the answer is, it's so easy to give up. It is easy to give up. And if you have to give up, but then start again the next day. That's the key. For me, the main things that keep me from giving up are I like the stories. I want to tell the story. I like imagining it. And once I got used to a comfortable process, I actually like writing. It took me years to get comfortable with it. But the more you do it, the main thing I would say, Yvonne, is imagine I'm assuming that you haven't done this a lot. The more that you do it, the more that you don't want to give up. Imagine it like walking. When you learned to walk, when you were a toddler, you would like sort of stagger, and it was sort of fun but unfamiliar, and you knew that you wanted to get across the room, but you knew that meant like you have to sort of throw your foot forward and throw your balance off, and you fell down, and it didn't seem like you could possibly get across the room. The more that you practiced that feeling, the more you get confidence in that process. The process of throwing your weight from one foot to the other without falling down. That same thing is true of writing. The more that you get used to the process of writing down an outline, of writing down a first draft, of looking at a first draft and noticing that you can make it better, the process of actually finishing something as best you can, even if it's not that great, see what you can do. Each one of the times you do that is like taking a step. And the more that you get used to the steps, the more that you can get comfortable and stop thinking about the stepping and start thinking about the place you want to go. You stop thinking about the writing at all, and you start thinking about the story and the characters. That's how I do it. Okay, no more questions. How to solve that I know the central conflict. I have Act 2, 3, but I have no idea how to establish the world in Act 2. These are big questions. The answer is, at very worst, if you absolutely know what Act 2 and Act 3 are going to be, but you can't figure out Act 2, 1, write Act 2 and Act 3. Write them, and then you'll probably have an easier time figuring out, well, what do I need to do to get to this? Either that or ask questions. Who do I need to establish? What about them do I need to establish? What does the audience need to know in order to get to Act 2? Like when Act 2 is starting, you have a bunch of characters. How do we meet each one of them? What is each one trying to do? Who are they? Those things are what Act 1 is about. So start to think, what scene, what action can tell me who these people are and what this situation is? That should give you Act 1. If you've got Act 2 and 3, you'll get Act 1. Hi, Alex. I heard about finding the acts recently, using a device that shows what a scene is about rather than over-relying on dialogue. It's something that you've used in your work. Here's the thing about stuff like this. It's a trick. It's a useful idea. It's not that important. I mean, it's okay. The idea that there's a device, a prop, or a location or something, that shows what the scene is about. The scene is about action, and action is about people. And so no matter, the scene may be about, the coming war, and therefore having a gun on the table or having a poster on the background that says join the army. Sure. But that's not what the scene is about. What the scene is going to be about is going to be an interaction between people, or between a person and things, but usually it's between people. And so my answer is, I love making the physical reality meaningful. Of course, that's great. If you can do that, do it. But worrying about over-relying on dialogue, people worry about that too much. The question is just, can I make the dialogue good? Can I make it dramatic? If there's good dramatic dialogue, you're not over-relying on it. People who think that dialogue is somehow evil, or that you shouldn't say things, like that if somebody says something, it's bad, that's wrong. That's not how drama works. People talk to each other. So my answer would be, using a device is great. If you have characters doing action, that device will be helpful. If the device is how your scene is working, I don't know how it's going to be much of a scene. Is it possible, hi Germany, football rocks, is it possible to have a spec script without a main protagonist, but with three with the same amount of screen time? Yes, that's called an ensemble. It's called sometimes they have two, and it's called a two-hander. Yes, the main thing about that, and I believe if you look in my character video, you'll see that I get into this. Do you have to have only one main character? No. Can you have three? Yes. Obviously, those three have only 1/3 of the space to move in, so they've got to be relatively simpler or easier to understand. They have to relatively less things they can do. On the other hand, the three, if they're interacting with each other, yeah, sure, it's possible. The key to this is that how is it going to end? Does each one have a separate story? If each one has a separate story, then you have to have three stories resolve at the end. And the problem with that is that usually, whatever is the last one is the main one. That's just how the audience perceives things. What do I mean by emotional pressure? In writing, I mean the pressure. Oh, my camera went out. I'm sorry. I've been on too long. I have to go. Let me try this again. Okay. Emotional pressure. Let's see. Are we here? Let me see. Am I here? Nope. There we go. Nope, it's not working. Okay, I have to go. Emotional pressure, I mean pressure on you as a writer. I don't mean emotional pressure in the story. I mean, you feel pressure. You feel anxious. You feel confused. You feel lost. Those are emotional pressures on you as a writer. Okay, I got to go. I apologize that I can't answer the rest of the questions, but we've gone too long. I will try to answer some of these in a later episode. But for now, I got to go. Take care and go write something. I will see you next week.